The crystal chandeliers of the Belmont Grand Hall cast fractured light across marble floors so polished they reflected the masks people wore, both literal and metaphorical. Vincent Corleone moved through the charity gala like a shark through still water, his presence parting the crowd without a word. The tuxedo fit him like armor. The smile he offered to senators and socialites never reached his eyes. He owned this room. Not in the way the gilt-edged invitations suggested, as a generous benefactor or pillar of the community. No. Vincent owned it the way a puppeteer owns marionettes. Every judge sipping champagne, every councilman laughing too loud, every businesswoman in pearls. They danced on strings he'd woven through bribes, favors, and fear. The gala was theater. Vincent preferred the machinery backstage. He excused himself from a conversation with the district attorney, a man whose mortgage Vincent paid, whose daughter's tuition Vincent funded, whose soul Vincent had purchased in installments. The hallway beyond the ballroom was blessedly empty, dim, utilitarian. Service corridors always told the truth that ballrooms lied about. Vincent loosened his bow tie, his polished shoes silent against industrial carpet. He was halfway to the private elevator when he heard it. A voice. Trembling. Desperate. Barely above a whisper. Coming from behind a locked service room door marked, Maintenance. Authorized personnel only. Vincent stopped. Please. Please don't tell anyone. The words cracked like thin ice under weight. Vincent's hand, which had been reaching for his phone, froze. He stepped closer to the door, his breathing controlled, his predator instincts sharpening. I wasn't supposed to survive. The voice was male. Young. Shaking with pain or terror or both. Vincent heard the wet sound of labored breathing, the kind that came with broken ribs or punctured lungs. He heard fabric tearing, makeshift bandaging maybe. If they know I'm alive. If anyone knows. Vincent's jaw tightened. His mind was already working, sifting through possibilities like a card shark counting tells. Who was behind that door? Why were they hiding in his building during his event, bleeding out while begging for anonymity? He should walk away. He should call his security chief, Luca, and have the situation handled with the efficiency his organization was known for. Clean, quiet, forgotten by morning. Instead, Vincent did something he rarely allowed himself. He listened. I found the numbers, the voice continued, and now Vincent could hear that the man was talking to himself, not to another person. Suck probably. Or delirium. The accounts. The names. God, the names. Judges. Politicians. Police captains. Even. The voice broke off into a coughing fit that sounded like it was tearing the speaker apart from the inside. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something cold and sharp settled in his chest. Numbers. Accounts. Names. Someone had been digging where they shouldn't. And they'd found something. I have to disappear, the man whispered when the coughing subsided. Completely. Forever. They can't know I survived the fire. They can't know I have copies. If they find out. Vincent's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. The gala, the performance, the senators waiting for him to return and laugh at their jokes. All of it faded into background noise. This was interesting. Please don't tell anyone, the voice repeated, and now it sounded like a prayer. Please. Just let me vanish. That's all I want. Just silence. Vincent placed his palm flat against the door. The metal was cool, impersonal. Beyond it, a man was bleeding, hiding, begging the universe for mercy. The universe had sent Vincent Corleone instead. A slow smile curved Vincent's mouth. The real one, the one that made his enemies check for exits. Because in that moment, listening to a stranger plead for anonymity, Vincent saw something beautiful. An opportunity. Not to keep a secret, but to weaponize one. His empire, the one he'd built through blood and strategy, the one that controlled the city's throat, had grown comfortable. Complacent. His lieutenants whispered about succession. His partners hedged their bets. His inner circle had started to forget who held the leash. And now, trembling behind a locked door, was a man with numbers. Accounts. Names. A man who wanted nothing more than to disappear. Vincent's smile widened. He would grant that wish, eventually. But first he would make sure everyone heard the secret this man wanted kept. He would leak it like poison into water, watch it spread, watch his enemies turn on each other like rabid dogs. He would burn the empire that no longer served him and rebuild it from the ashes, with himself as the only constant. The man behind the door wanted silence. Vincent would give him thunder. He pulled out his phone, typed a message to Luca. Service room, 3rd floor west corridor. One survivor. Alive. Secure him. Tell no one else. Then he straightened his bow tie, smoothed his jacket and walked back toward the ballroom where the masks and the music waited. Behind him, in the darkness, a man prayed for anonymity. Ahead of him, Vincent Corleone planned a revelation. Hey there, beautiful people. Where are you watching from tonight? How's your week going? If you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor. Hit that button right now. You're going to want to see how this story unfolds, trust me. Now, let's find out what happens when a secret becomes a weapon. Vincent Corleone hadn't built an empire by trusting anyone. Not his father, who taught him that loyalty was purchased, not given. Not his mother, who died believing her husband was a legitimate businessman. And certainly not the parade of associates, enforcers and politicians who smiled to his face while calculating how to survive his inevitable fall. Trust was a liability Vincent couldn't afford. But control? Control was everything. He'd learned that at 16, watching his father bleed out on a restaurant floor, not from a rival's bullet but from his own lieutenant's betrayal. The man had smiled at Sunday dinners. Had called Vincent's father brother. Had put 3 rounds in his chest the moment a better offer came along. Young Vincent had knelt in his father's blood and made a promise. Never give anyone enough power to betray you. And if they try, make sure the lesson kills them and educates everyone else. 20 years later, he'd kept that promise. His organization ran like clockwork precisely because every gear knew what happened when it slipped. His legitimate businesses, real estate, construction, waste management, generated enough revenue to satisfy the IRS. His illegitimate ones, gambling, protection, strategic political interference, generated the kind of money that bought judges and mayors. But lately the clockwork had started to tick irregularly. His consigliere, Richard Bateman, had been asking too many questions about offshore accounts. His enforcer chief, Luca, had been recruiting soldiers without approval. His business partner, Councilman Arnold Rothstein, had missed 2 meetings, unthinkable 6 months ago. The empire was shifting beneath him like continental plates before an earthquake. Vincent felt it in his bones. And now, bleeding in a locked room during a gala Vincent himself had orchestrated, was a man who'd apparently uncovered something worth dying for. Numbers. Accounts. Names. Vincent returned to the ballroom wearing his public face. Charming, gracious, untouchable. He shook hands with the chief of police, a man whose gambling debts Vincent had cleared in exchange for strategic blindness. He kissed the cheek of Senator Margaret Ripley, whose campaign he'd funded and whose vote he owned. Vincent. Arnold Rothstein approached with a champagne flute and a politician's smile. Hell of an event. The mayor was just saying. Walk with me, Arnold. Vincent's tone was pleasant, but it wasn't a request. They moved to a quiet corner near the terrace doors. Arnold's smile faltered at the edges. Something wrong? The councilman asked. Vincent studied him. Arnold was 52, soft around the middle, with the kind of face that photographed well and hid desperation poorly. He'd been on Vincent's payroll for 8 years. A reliable vote, a useful connection to city planning and zoning. But reliable men didn't miss meetings. You've seemed distracted lately, Vincent said. Problems at home? What? No, everything's fine. Linda's fine, the kids are. Because if there were problems, Arnold, you'd tell me. Wouldn't you? The councilman's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Of course. Always. Vincent let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, then smiled and clapped Arnold's shoulder. Good. I'd hate to think you were keeping secrets. He walked away before Arnold could respond, his mind already dissecting the man's micro-expressions. Fear? Yes. Guilt? Possibly. But guilty of what? An affair? Embezzlement? Or something that connected to the bleeding man upstairs? His phone buzzed. A text from Luca. Package secured. Conscious. Won't talk. Vincent typed back. Good. Keep him that way. I'm coming. 30 minutes later, after excusing himself with promises to return for the silent auction, Vincent stood in a private office 3 floors above the gala. Luca waited outside the door, 6'4" of scar tissue and unwavering loyalty, the one man Vincent came closest to trusting. Inside, handcuffed to a radiator, was the secret. The young man looked worse than he'd sounded. Mid-20s, maybe 30, with dark hair matted with blood and a face that had clearly met someone's fists recently. His shirt was torn, revealing crude bandaging around his ribs. His eyes, though, sharp, intelligent, terrified, those tracked Vincent's every movement. "What's your name?" Vincent asked, settling into a leather chair as casually as if they were discussing weather. The man's jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter." "It does to me." Silence. Vincent leaned forward. "Let me tell you what I know. You're hurt. You're hiding. And you're begging for anonymity because you've uncovered something that important people want buried." He paused. "How am I doing so far?" The man's breathing quickened, but he said nothing. "Here's what I'm curious about," Vincent continued. "You say you weren't supposed to survive. Survive what? And who decided you shouldn't?" "I can't," the man's voice cracked. "If I tell you I'm dead. You're chained to a radiator in a mafia boss's private office." Vincent's smile was arctic. "You might already be dead. The question is whether your death means something or nothing." The young man stared at him, and Vincent saw the exact moment calculation overtook fear. This wasn't some civilian stumbling into danger. This was someone who understood power, leverage, risk. Someone who'd chosen to dig where monsters buried their secrets. "My name is Ethan Prospero," the man finally said. "I'm a forensic accountant. And 3 weeks ago, I found a laundering network that connects half the city's government to organized crime." Vincent's expression didn't change, but his pulse quickened. "I had proof. Documents. Digital records. Enough to bring down judges, captains, council members." Ethan's eyes locked onto Vincent's. "And enough to prove that your organization is just one piece of something much bigger." Now that was interesting. "So you faked your death," Vincent said. "They burned my apartment with me supposedly inside. I barely got out. And the proof." Ethan's split lip curved into something that might have been a smile. "Somewhere safe." Vincent stood, buttoned his jacket and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "You begged someone not to tell anyone about you, Ethan Prospero." "I know. I'm going to do the exact opposite." He left before the accountant could respond. Vincent didn't return to the gala. Instead, he sent a text to Richard Bateman, his consigliere. "Need you. Private office." "No." Then he poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and waited. Richard arrived 12 minutes later, his tuxedo immaculate, his expression mildly annoyed at being summoned away from potential donors. At 61, Richard was old guard mafia. The kind who remembered when disputes were settled with sit-downs instead of bullets, when honor actually meant something. He was also the smartest man Vincent had ever met, which made him either invaluable or dangerous depending on the day. "This better be good," Richard said, accepting the whiskey Vincent offered. "Senator Ripley was about to introduce me to her new chief of staff, and I have it on good authority he's drowning in student loans." "We have a forensic accountant handcuffed in the storage room," Vincent said. Richard paused mid-sip. "I'm sorry, we have a what?" "He faked his death 3 weeks ago after uncovering a money laundering network. Says he has proof connecting politicians, judges, police, and us, to something bigger." Vincent swirled his glass. "He was hiding at our gala, bleeding, begging not to be found." "Jesus Christ." Richard set down his drink. "Who else knows?" "Just Luca. And now you. And you didn't just." Richard made a subtle gesture that encompassed disposal, disappearance, and every other euphemism for murder. "No. Why not?" Vincent moved to the window overlooking the city. His city, spreading out in lights and shadows, beautiful and corrupt in equal measure. Because he said something interesting. He said our organization is just one piece of something much bigger. Richard's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone's been playing a longer game than we realized." Vincent turned back. "And I want to know who. So we make him talk." "We don't have to." Vincent smiled. "He'll talk on his own once he understands the alternative." 20 minutes later, Ethan Prospero sat across from both men, still handcuffed but now bandaged properly. Luca had fetched the organization's doctor, a disgraced surgeon who asked no questions and kept perfect silence. Ethan looked between Vincent and Richard like a rabbit evaluating wolves. "Let me explain your situation," Vincent said pleasantly. "You have information that threatens powerful people. You faked your death to escape them. But you're not safe, you're just delayed. Eventually they'll realize you survived. Eventually they'll find you. That's why I need to disappear, Ethan said hoarsely. Completely. New identity, new country, just... They'll still find you, Richard interrupted. These aren't amateurs you're running from. If they want you dead badly enough to burn down your apartment, they'll chase you to whatever beach you're planning to retire on. Ethan's face went pale. Then what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to give us everything you found, Vincent said. Names, accounts, evidence. And in return we'll give you something better than anonymity. What could possibly be better than revenge? The word hung in the air like a blade. Ethan stared at Vincent. You want to use my evidence to go after them. I want to burn down everyone who tried to kill you, Vincent corrected. But strategically, carefully, in a way that destroys your enemies and strengthens my position. He leaned forward. You think you uncovered corruption. What you actually uncovered is a power struggle. Someone's been building an empire inside my empire, using my resources, my connections, my protection, all without my knowledge. And that pisses you off, Ethan said slowly. It offends me professionally. Richard coughed to hide what might have been a laugh. Ethan shook his head. You're insane. If I give you that information, if you expose it, I become the most wanted man in the city. Every dirty cop, every bought judge, every criminal who thought they were safe will panic, Vincent finished. Yes. And in that panic they'll make mistakes. They'll turn on each other. They'll expose themselves trying to save themselves. His smile was sharp as broken glass. And by the time the smoke clears, everyone who wanted you dead will either be dead themselves or too weak to matter. You can't guarantee that. No, Vincent admitted. But I can guarantee that running will only delay the inevitable. At least this way you get to watch them burn. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his breathing still labored, his eyes calculating odds that didn't favor him no matter how he arranged them. There's something you're not telling me, he said finally. Some reason you're doing this beyond just being offended. What is it? Vincent exchanged a glance with Richard. The old consigliere raised an eyebrow. Your call. My empire is compromised, Vincent said. I don't know by whom or how deeply, but I felt it shifting for months. People getting ambitious. Meetings I'm not invited to. Money moving in patterns I don't recognize. He stood pacing. I built this organization on control. Someone's trying to take that control from me. Your evidence doesn't just threaten corrupt officials. It threatens whoever's been building a shadow network under my nose. So you want to flush them out. I want to burn them down and rebuild from the ashes. And you, Ethan Prospero, are going to be the match. Ethan looked at his handcuffed wrists, at the two most dangerous men he'd probably ever met, at a future that offered only terrible choices. If I do this, he said quietly, if I give you everything I found, I want protection. Real protection. Not just muscle. I want to be hidden somewhere even you can't find me until this is over. Vincent smiled. Deal. And when it's over I want out. Completely. New identity, new life, clean slate. Done. One more thing. Ethan's voice hardened despite his injuries. The people who tried to kill me, I want to know their names before they die. Vincent extended his hand. Now we understand each other. Ethan stared at that hand, manicured, powerful, offering damnation disguised as salvation. Then he shook it. The evidence was worse than Vincent had imagined. And better. Ethan had spent 3 days in a safe house, one of Vincent's ghost properties, a brownstone in a neighborhood where people minded their business, recovering from broken ribs and compiling his findings. Now he sat at Vincent's private office desk, laptop open, pointing at spreadsheets that told stories of betrayal in numbers and routing codes. This account, Ethan said, highlighting a series of transactions, moves money from your waste management contracts through 3 shell companies, then into a cryptocurrency exchange registered in the Cayman Islands. From there, it's converted back to cash and distributed to... He pulled up another document. 6 judges for police captains and 2 city councilmen. Vincent's expression was carved from ice. I authorized none of that. I know. Because the authorization signatures are forged. Good forgeries but not perfect. Ethan zoomed in on a digital signature. See that pixel distortion? Someone scanned your actual signature and manipulated it. Richard, standing behind Vincent's shoulder, swore softly. How much are we talking about? From your organization alone? Approximately 47 million over 2 years. The number landed like a physical blow. Someone's been skimming $47 million, Vincent said slowly, and using it to buy loyalty I thought I already owned. Not just loyalty, Ethan corrected. Infrastructure. Look at the distribution pattern. Every official on this list has oversight over something critical. Court cases, police investigations, zoning approvals, contract bids. Whoever's running this isn't just stealing. They're building a parallel power structure. Vincent stood, walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Below, the city hummed with oblivious life. Somewhere down there, someone in his organization was orchestrating a coup so subtle he'd almost missed it. Almost. Can you trace it back to the source? Richard asked Ethan. I'm trying. But whoever designed this is smart. The shell companies are nested like Russian dolls, each layer registered in a different jurisdiction. It'll take time too. We don't have time, Vincent interrupted. The moment we start moving against these people, whoever's running this will know we're coming. So what do we do? Ethan asked. Vincent turned and his smile was predatory. We make them paranoid first. The strategy was elegant in its cruelty. Vincent didn't expose the whole network. Instead, over the following week he leaked fragments, careful, calculated pieces of information designed to make his enemies suspect each other. An anonymous envelope delivered to Judge Patricia Morrison containing copies of wire transfers to her personal account. No explanation. No demands. Just evidence that someone knew. A phone call to Police Captain Edward Drake, played through a voice modulator. We know about the Cayman account. 48 hours to transfer half to account number. Then static, then silence. Let him wonder who we were. A rumor planted in Councilman Arnold Rothstein's favorite restaurant that his business partner was cooperating with federal investigators. Not true. But Arnold didn't know that. Vincent watched the dominoes fall with quiet satisfaction. Judge Morrison missed 2 court appearances claiming illness. Captain Drake requested a sudden leave of absence. Arnold Rothstein started making phone calls to lawyers at 3 in the morning. They're eating themselves alive, Richard observed during one of their evening briefings. Morrison tried to reach out to Drake. He won't take her calls. Arnold showed up at Drake's house. Drake pulled a gun on him. Good, Vincent said. Fear makes people sloppy. But Ethan, who'd been watching this orchestrated chaos unfold from his safe house, looked troubled. You understand they'll eventually realize someone's manipulating them. And when they do, they'll turn their attention to finding who, Vincent finished. Which is exactly what I want. Let them chase shadows while we dig deeper. Unless they figure out it's you. They won't. Because I'm still playing the role of oblivious crime boss. Still attending meetings. Still shaking hands. Still acting like everything's exactly as it should be. Vincent poured himself a drink. The best disguise is hiding in plain sight. But hiding in plain sight was becoming complicated. Because Luca had noticed something. Boss, he said, catching Vincent before a meeting with his lieutenants, we've got a problem. Tommy Marconi's been asking questions about the accountant. Vincent went very still. What kind of questions? About the fire 3 weeks ago. The one that supposedly killed Ethan Prospero. Tommy says his cousin works fire investigation. Says the body they found doesn't match the records. Wrong height, wrong dental. Luca's face was grim. He's wondering if maybe Prospero survived. Tommy Marconi. One of Vincent's enforcers. Loyal for 15 years. And now, suddenly, curious about things he shouldn't be. Who else has he talked to? Vincent asked quietly. Just me far as I know. But boss, if Tommy's asking questions someone told him to ask them. Which meant the rot went deeper than Vincent had suspected. Bring Tommy to the warehouse tonight, Vincent said. Tell him I need him for a collection job. Don't mention this conversation. Luca nodded and left. Vincent stood in the empty hallway, his mind working through implications like a chess player seeing 20 moves ahead. Tommy was compromised, who else? How many of his own soldiers were actually working for whoever was building this shadow empire? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're looking in the wrong places. Vincent stared at the message. No follow-up. No explanation. He called Richard immediately. Did you just text me? No. Why? Someone knows we're investigating. Boss. That's impossible. The only people who know are you, me, Luca, and Ethan, Vincent finished. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't the accountant. Ethan was desperate, terrified, and completely dependent on Vincent's protection. He had nothing to gain from betraying them, which meant someone else had been watching. Someone who knew Vincent well enough to predict his moves. Someone inside his inner circle. Vincent texted back. Who is this? The response came 30 seconds later. Someone who wants the same thing you do. But you're going to need help you don't expect. Then, trust the accountant. And watch Richard. Vincent's blood went cold. Vincent didn't tell Richard about the text message. He said he watched him. For 3 days, Vincent became a shadow in his own organization, observing patterns he'd previously ignored. He noticed how Richard took phone calls in private, how certain meetings ran long without clear results, how the old consigliere always seemed to know things slightly before Vincent informed him. Could mean nothing. Or it could mean everything. The warehouse meeting with Tommy Marconi happened on a Thursday night. Rain drumming against corrugated metal roofs, the kind of weather that swallowed screams. Vincent arrived early with Luca, the space empty except for old shipping containers and the smell of rust. Tommy showed up precisely on time. A stocky man in his 40s with scar tissue where his left ear used to be, a reminder of a collection that went sideways in 2019. He'd been loyal ever since. Or so Vincent had believed. Boss, Tommy nodded respectfully. Luca said you needed muscle for a pickup? Actually, Vincent said, leaning against a container, I needed to ask you about Ethan Prospero. Tommy's face went carefully blank. Who? The forensic accountant who died in a fire 3 weeks ago. Except you've been asking questions about whether he actually died. Vincent's voice was conversational, almost friendly. I'm curious why. Tommy's hand drifted toward his jacket. Luca materialized behind him, a gun pressed to the base of Tommy's skull before he could draw. Don't, Luca said quietly. Tommy froze. Boss, I can explain. Then explain. Sweat beaded on Tommy's forehead despite the cold. I got a call. Anonymous. Said there was money in it if I could confirm whether Prospero survived the fire. I swear I didn't know it was connected to you. I thought it was just... Who called you? I don't know. It was scrambled, distorted. I couldn't. Vincent raised a hand. Luca removed the gun but stayed close. What exactly did they ask you to find out? Whether Prospero survived. Where he might be hiding. Whether anyone had been asking about him. Tommy's words tumbled out desperately. I swear on my mother, boss, I didn't give them anything because I didn't know anything. I was just supposed to gather information. And report back how? Dead drop. Pier 47 behind the third piling. I was supposed to leave a note there tomorrow night. Vincent exchanged a glance with Luca. You're going to leave that note, Tommy. Exactly as instructed. But you're going to tell them that Prospero definitely died in that fire, that you confirmed it with your cousin, that there's no doubt. Tommy blinked. But boss, if they find out I lied. They won't. Because you're going to be very convincing. And then you're going to continue your normal routine, and if they contact you again you're going to tell me immediately. Vincent stepped closer. This is your one chance to prove you're still loyal, Tommy. Don't waste it. I won't, boss. I swear. Good. Now get out. Tommy left like a man escaping execution. When he was gone, Luca turned to Vincent. You believe him? I believe he's terrified enough to be useful. Which is all that matters right now. Vincent pulled out his phone, stared at the mysterious text message again. Trust the accountant. And watch Richard. We need to talk to Ethan, Vincent said. Now. They found Ethan in the safe house, surrounded by 3 laptops and enough energy drink cans to stock a convenience store. He looked up when Vincent and Luca entered, his face haggard but alert. I found something, Ethan said before Vincent could speak. Something bad. Show me. Ethan turned one of the laptops around. I've been tracking the money flow backward trying to find the source. And I found a pattern. Every month, on the 15th, exactly $2 million moves from the Shell Company network into a single offshore account. It's been happening for 18 months. Whose account? That's the problem. It's registered to a holding company called Sentinel Equity Partners. And when I dug into Sentinel's ownership structure, Ethan pulled up another document. It's owned by a trust. And that trust's primary beneficiary is... He stopped, his face pale. Is who? Vincent demanded. Richard Bateman. The name hung in the air like poison gas. Vincent's world tilted. Richard. His consigliere. His oldest advisor. The man who'd stood beside him for 15 years, who'd counseled him through wars and negotiations, who Vincent had trusted more than anyone except. Oh, it couldn't be. Are you certain? Vincent's voice was deadly quiet. I've verified it 3 times. The paper trail is deliberately obscure, but it's there. Richard Bateman is receiving $2 million monthly from the same network that's been stealing from you. Ethan hesitated. There's more. I found communication logs. Encrypted messages between Sentinel and several of the compromised officials. They're coordinating. Planning. Planning what? A transition. That's the word they keep using. They're waiting for something, some catalyst, and then they're going to execute a transition of leadership. Lucas swore viciously. Richard's planning to take over. But Vincent was thinking about the text message. Watch Richard. Someone had warned him. Someone who knew what Richard was doing but hadn't revealed themselves. When is this transition supposed to happen? Vincent asked. Ethan scrolled through messages. The latest communication says, soon. That the volatility you've been creating, the leaks, the paranoia among the officials, is actually accelerating their timeline. They're worried you're getting too close to the truth. Which means, Vincent said slowly, that we're running out of time. His phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Richard knows about the safe house. Move Ethan. No. Vincent's blood turned to ice. He grabbed Ethan's arm. Pack up. Everything. We're leaving. What? Why? Yow. Ethan scrambled to close laptops and grab hard drives. Luca was already at the window scanning the street below. Boss, Luca said quietly. 3 cars. Just pulled up. Men getting out. Vincent moved to look. 6 men, moving with tactical precision toward the brownstone's entrance. Professional. Armed. And leading them, visible in the streetlight, was someone Vincent recognized. Richard Bateman. The old consigliere looked up at the window as if he knew exactly where Vincent was standing. Their eyes met across the distance. Richard smiled. Then he drew his gun. Back door. Vincent shouted, grabbing Ethan's laptop bag while Luca swept up the remaining hard drives. They ran through the safe house, down a narrow hallway, past the kitchen where Ethan's coffee had gone cold, toward the rear exit that Vincent had insisted on when purchasing the property years ago. Always have an exit. His father's voice, one of the few lessons worth remembering. Behind them, the front door exploded inward. Move, move. Luca urged, his gun drawn, covering their retreat. They burst into the alley behind the brownstone just as the first shots rang out. Brick dust sprayed from the wall beside Vincent's head. Ethan stumbled and Vincent grabbed him, half dragging him toward the waiting car. A nondescript sedan Luca had parked there as standard protocol. Get in. Vincent threw Ethan into the back seat, Dovin after him. Luca slid behind the wheel, engine already roaring to life. More gunfire. The rear window spiderwebbed but didn't shatter. Bulletproof glass. Another precaution Vincent had insisted on. The car lurched forward, tires screaming against wet pavement. Vincent looked back through the damaged window. Richard stood in the alley, guns still raised, watching them escape with an expression of cold calculation. No rage. No frustration. Just the look of a chess player whose opponent had made an expected move. Where do we go? Luca asked, weaving through traffic. Every safe house we have, Richard knows about. Vincent's mind raced. Richard had been his consigliere for 15 years. He knew every property, every contact, every contingency plan. The network Vincent had built for protection had become a cage. The marina, Vincent said finally. Pier 23. I have a boat there registered under a name Richard doesn't know. You sure about that? Ethan asked, his voice shaking. Vincent wasn't sure about anything anymore. The boat was a 40-foot cabin cruiser Vincent had purchased through a shell company even Richard didn't know existed. A paranoia investment from 3 years ago when he'd first started feeling the subtle shifts in his organization. At the time, he'd thought himself overcautious. Now it might save their lives. They boarded in darkness, the marina quiet except for water lapping against hulls and the distant sound of traffic. Luca secured the perimeter while Vincent got Ethan settled in the cabin below deck. "How bad is it?" Ethan asked, clutching his laptop like a lifeline. His hands were shaking. "Bad," Vincent admitted, pouring them both whiskey. "Richard knows my organization better than I do. Every asset, every ally, every..." His phone rang. Richard's name on the caller ID. Vincent stared at it for 3 rings, then answered. "Bold of you to call after trying to kill me." "Vincent." Richard's voice was calm, almost apologetic. "You weren't supposed to figure it out this quickly. The plan was much cleaner. The plan where you steal $50 million and stage a coup? $47 million. And it's not a coup, it's a restructuring. You've become erratic, Vincent. Paranoid. The organization needs stable leadership." Vincent's grip on the phone tightened. "I built this organization. And you've run it into the ground. Your father would be ashamed." Richard paused. "But I'm not calling to argue philosophy. I'm calling to offer you a choice." "I'm listening." "Give me the accountant and whatever evidence he's compiled. Walk away. I'll give you 72 hours to disappear. New identity, offshore accounts, a comfortable retirement somewhere tropical. No one comes after you. No one dies. And if I refuse? Then I activate every asset I've cultivated over 2 years. Every judge, every captain, every politician who's been taking my money instead of yours. I'll have warrants issued for your arrest on charges that will stick. I'll have your legitimate businesses seized. I'll dismantle everything you've built piece by piece, and then I'll find you and kill you anyway." The casual certainty in Richard's voice was more chilling than any threat. "You've been planning this for 2 years, Vincent said quietly. "Longer, actually. But 2 years ago I realized you were never going to step aside voluntarily. You're too much like your father, convinced you're irreplaceable." Richard sighed. "I admired you once, Vincent. But empires need to evolve, and you've become the obstacle to evolution. Why are you really doing this?" Because I can. Because I've built something better than what you created. And because when this is over I'll control a network that doesn't just run this city. It owns it completely. Politicians, police, courts, media. All of it. "You'll have a war on your hands," Vincent said. "My loyalists won't just accept your takeover. Your loyalists are already mine. Tommy Marconi? He's been reporting to me for 6 months. Luca. Well, Luca's with you, but he's one man. The others? They'll follow power, Vincent. They always do." Richard's voice hardened. "You have 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and the hunting begins." The line went dead. Vincent set down the phone carefully, afraid that any sudden movement might shatter what little composure he had left. "What did he say?" Ethan asked. "He wants you dead and me gone." Can he really do everything he threatened? Vincent thought about the network Richard had built, the officials he'd compromised, the soldiers he'd turned. He thought about Tommy Marconi's betrayal, about how many others might already belong to Richard. "Yes," he said finally. "He can." Luca appeared in the cabin doorway. "Boss, we've got a problem. I just got a text from Marco. Richard's put out word that you've gone rogue. He's saying you've been skimming from the organization, that you killed 2 soldiers who confronted you about it. Half our crew believes him." Vincent closed his eyes. It was brilliant, really. Richard wasn't just taking over. He was destroying Vincent's reputation in the process, making sure no one would support a comeback. "We can't fight him," Ethan said quietly. "Can we?" Vincent looked at the young accountant, at Luca standing loyal despite everything, at the phone that had just delivered his death sentence. "No," he admitted. "Not directly." But even as he said it, his mind was already working. Because Richard had made one mistake. He'd forgotten that Vincent Corleone never played the game everyone expected. Vincent didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in the boat's cabin with Ethan's laptops spread across the table, studying the evidence with fresh eyes. Numbers, accounts, communications, all the pieces of Richard's empire laid bare in spreadsheets and encrypted messages. But Vincent wasn't looking at what Richard had built. He was looking for what Richard had missed. "Here," Vincent said suddenly, pointing at a transaction log. "This account. It doesn't fit the pattern." Ethan, exhausted and half asleep in the corner, dragged himself over. "What do you mean?" "Every other account in Richard's network receives funds on the 15th of each month. Clockwork. But this one, Vincent traced the dates, receives irregular deposits. Sometimes the 3rd, sometimes the 19th, sometimes twice in 1 month. Could be a secondary operation, Ethan suggested. Something Richard's running separately. Or, Vincent said slowly, it's not Richard's account at all. He pulled out his phone, stared at the unknown number that had warned him twice now. Trust the accountant. Watch Richard. Move Ethan now. Someone had been helping them. Someone inside Richard's operation who wanted it destroyed as much as Vincent did. Vincent typed, "Who are you?" The response came 30 seconds later. "Someone Richard betrayed. Just like you. Why help me? Because you're the only one who can stop him. But you can't do it by fighting. You need to make him destroy himself." Vincent stared at those words. Make Richard destroy himself. How? Another message. Richard's network depends on loyalty bought with money. Cut off the money, you cut off the loyalty. I don't control the accounts anymore. Richard does. Wrong. You control the evidence. And evidence is worth more than money when people realize they're exposed. Vincent's mind began to race. He looked at Ethan. Can you access Richard's communication network? The encrypted messages between him and the officials. Maybe. If I had the right access point. Why? Because we're not going to fight Richard. Vincent's smile was sharp and cold. We're going to make him fight himself. The plan crystallized over the next 6 hours. Richard had built his empire on secrets. Compromised officials, hidden accounts, evidence of corruption carefully stored as leverage. But leverage was a double-edged sword. The same evidence that gave Richard power over people could destroy them if released publicly. And if those people thought Richard was about to expose them, we're going to send messages from Richard's own communication system, Vincent explained to Ethan and Luca. Messages to each of his corrupted officials, judges, captains, everyone in his network. Saying what? Luca asked. That Richard is cooperating with federal investigators. That he's offering up evidence on everyone in exchange for immunity. That they have 48 hours before the indictments come down. Ethan's eyes widened. They'll panic. They'll do more than panic, Vincent said. They'll turn on Richard. They'll try to save themselves by exposing him first, by cutting deals, by destroying evidence, including evidence that connects them to him. Richard's entire network will eat itself alive. But we'd need access to his actual communication system, Ethan said. His encryption, his servers. Vincent's phone buzzed. The unknown number. Check your email. Password is Sentinel 2024. Vincent pulled up his email on Ethan's laptop. New message, no sender name, containing a single attachment, encrypted server credentials and access codes for Richard's entire communication infrastructure. How? Ethan breathed. Our mysterious friend, Vincent said, already typing the credentials into the system. Whoever they are, they've been inside Richard's operation long enough to get root access. The screen flickered. Suddenly they were looking at Richard's command center. Every message, every transaction, every piece of leverage he'd collected on his network of corrupted officials. By God, Ethan whispered. This is everything. Vincent scrolled through the communications, his expression darkening with each revelation. Richard hadn't just been stealing and planning a coup. He'd been systematically destroying competitors, framing rivals, orchestrating arrests and assassinations, all while smiling across conference tables and offering Vincent counsel. How long do we have before Richard realizes we're in his system? Luca asked. Not long, Ethan said, fingers flying across the keyboard. But long enough. I can automate the message distribution, make it look like it came from Richard's own devices. By the time he realizes what's happened, the damage will be done, Vincent finished. Do it. The messages went out at 3:47 a.m. 43 separate communications to 43 compromised officials. Each one carefully crafted to maximize panic. This is Richard Bateman. Federal investigators have made an offer I can't refuse. I'm providing full documentation on our arrangement in exchange for immunity. You have 48 hours before the indictments are filed. Do what you need to do. This is goodbye. Vincent watched the chaos unfold through intercepted phone calls and panicked emails. Judge Morrison called her lawyer at 4 a.m., demanding immediate legal representation and offering to cooperate with any investigation in exchange for protection. Captain Drake started deleting files at 4:15 a.m., not realizing that the deletion itself created a digital trail that would damn him. Councilman Arnold Rothstein tried to flee at 4:30 a.m., got pulled over for speeding, and had a complete breakdown when the traffic cop asked for his license. By 6 a.m., 3 officials had retained lawyers. By 8 a.m., 2 had contacted the actual FBI offering to trade information for immunity. By 10 a.m., the cascade had become an avalanche. And through it all, Vincent's phone stayed silent. Until noon, when Richard finally called. "You son of a bitch." Richard's voice was raw with fury. No more calculation, no more calm. "What did you do?" "I gave your network exactly what you gave me," Vincent said pleasantly. "Betrayal. They're falling apart. Morrison's talking to the feds. Drake's gone into hiding. Arnold tried to hang himself in his garage. Tried. His wife found him. Vincent, you've destroyed everything. The entire network is compromised now. Actual federal investigators are circling because these idiots keep calling them." "Sounds like a problem," Vincent said. "Your problem. You think you've won? I still have soldiers. I still have resources. I'll burn you to the—" "You'll do nothing," Vincent interrupted, "because the moment you make a move against me, I release all the evidence Ethan compiled. Every transaction, every message, every piece of leverage you collected. Including the parts that implicate you in 17 felonies and 6 murders." Silence. "It's over, Richard," Vincent said quietly. "You played the game well. But you forgot that I taught you how to play." He hung up. For the first time in days, Vincent allowed himself to breathe. The endgame came faster than Vincent expected. 12 hours after the messages destroyed Richard's network, Vincent received a location via text from the unknown number. Warehouse District. Pier 47. Midnight. "Come alone. Bring the accountant. Time to finish this." "It's a trap," Lucas said immediately. "Of course it's a trap," Vincent agreed. "But it's also the only way to find out who's been helping us." "And why?" Ethan looked between them, still pale from days of running. "You're seriously going to walk into an obvious trap?" "We're going to walk into a controlled situation," Vincent corrected. "There's a difference." By 11 p.m., they'd positioned Luca and 3 loyal soldiers. Men Vincent had personally vetted, who'd proven themselves before Richard's corruption spread, around the warehouse perimeter. Not close enough to be obvious. Close enough to intervene. Vincent and Ethan went in alone. The warehouse was the same one where Vincent had confronted Tommy Marconi. Rain drummed on the metal roof, puddles reflecting sodium lights. In the center of the space, surrounded by shadows, stood 2 figures. One was Richard Bateman, looking older than Vincent had ever seen him, disheveled, defeated, a gun hanging loose in his right hand. The other was a woman Vincent didn't recognize. 30-something, athletic build, blonde hair pulled back, wearing tactical gear and holding a gun pointed steadily at Richard's head. "Hello, Vincent," she said calmly. "I'm Charlotte Hayes. We haven't officially met." Vincent studied her. "You're the one who's been sending me messages." "Yes." "And you are?" "Richard's partner. Or I was, until 6 months ago when I discovered he was planning to cut me out of everything we'd built together." Charlotte's smile was bitter. "See, Richard didn't build this network alone. I designed the money laundering system. I recruited half the officials. I created the infrastructure. But Richard decided that when the transition happened, he'd take sole control and I'd get a retirement package. Like some discarded mistress." Richard laughed. A hollow, broken sound. "Charlotte, this is pathetic. You really brought him here to what? Gloat." "No," she said. "I brought him here to give him a choice." He looked at Vincent. "Richard's network is destroyed. The officials are scattered, panicking, cutting deals. But the infrastructure remains. The accounts, the connections, the systems, all still functional. Someone's going to control it. The question is who?" Vincent saw where this was going. "You want me to partner with you." "I want us both to survive this," Charlotte corrected. Richard overplayed his hand because he got greedy. "You're smarter than that. Together we could rebuild, cleaner, more efficient, with actual loyalty instead of purchased cooperation. And Richard dies tonight. One way or another. The only question is whether you pull the trigger or I do." Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside Vincent. Richard stared at the ground, his gun hand trembling. Vincent walked slowly toward the center of the warehouse, his footsteps echoing. He stopped 5 feet from Richard, the man who'd been his advisor, his confidant, his friend for 15 years. "Look at me," Vincent said. Richard raised his head. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "Did you ever actually respect me?" Vincent asked quietly. "Or was it always just calculation?" "Both," Richard said hoarsely. "I respected what you built. But I wanted it for myself. That's not personal, Vincent. That's just nature. The strong replace the weak. And you thought I'd become weak. You became predictable. That's the same thing in our world." Vincent nodded slowly. Then he turned to Charlotte. "Your offer is tempting. But I have a counter-proposal." "I'm listening." "You keep the infrastructure. All of it. The accounts, the systems, everything you and Richard built." "I don't want it." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "What's the catch?" "No catch. I'm done with empires. Richard was right about one thing. I've become what I hate. A man so obsessed with control that I stopped seeing the cage I built around myself." Vincent glanced at Ethan. "The last few days running for my life I've been clearer than I've been in years. I don't want this anymore." "You're lying," Richard said. "This is some kind of—" "I'm not," Vincent interrupted. "Charlotte, you can have the network. Rebuild it however you want. But I have 3 conditions." "Name them." 1. Ethan Prospero gets a new identity and clean exit. No pursuit, no revenge. He disappears completely. Charlotte glanced at Ethan, shrugged. "Acceptable." 2. The evidence Ethan compiled gets buried. No releases, no leaks. The officials who are already panicking will calm down once they realize there's no actual federal investigation. "That serves my interests too." "Agreed." 3. Richard lives. The warehouse went silent except for the rain. "What?" Charlotte's gun hand tensed. "He lives," Vincent repeated. "But he loses everything. His money, his reputation, his power. He becomes exactly what he feared, irrelevant. Forgotten. That's a worse punishment than death for a man like Richard." Richard's face twisted with humiliation and rage. "Vincent, you self-righteous. Accept it or die," Charlotte said coldly, her gun still trained on him. "Your choice." Richard's shoulders sagged. "Fine. I accept." Charlotte studied Vincent for a long moment, then slowly lowered her weapon. "You're serious? You're actually walking away?" "I'm tired, Charlotte. Tired of fighting. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of being the monster my father raised me to be." Vincent pulled out his phone, held it up. "Ethan sent copies of all the evidence to 3 secure locations with instructions to release it if anything happens to either of us. So we all have incentive to keep this peace." "Smart," Charlotte admitted. "Fine. We have a deal." She extended her hand. Vincent shook it. Then he turned to Richard one final time. "Goodbye, old friend. Try not to waste what's left of your life." He and Ethan walked toward the warehouse exit. Behind them, Richard called out, "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back when you realize there's nothing else, when you remember what you really are." Vincent kept walking. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city stretched before them, lights glittering like promises. "Is it really over?" Ethan asked. Vincent thought about empires and cages, about power and peace. "Yes," he said. "It's over." 3 months later, Vincent Corleone sat in a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon, watching rain streak down the window. He was reading a paperback, something he'd never had time for in his previous life, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number, but he recognized the pattern. He answered. "Charlotte." "Vincent." Her voice was calm, professional. "Just checking in. Making sure our arrangement is still holding." "Why wouldn't it be?" "Because Richard tried to make a move last week. Contacted some of his old associates, tried to rebuild. I shut it down, but I wanted you to know." Vincent took a sip of coffee. "How is he?" "Broken. Living in a studio apartment in Queens, working security at a shopping mall. He sees me everywhere, in every black car, every suited man. Paranoia's eating him alive." Pause. "You were right. This is worse than killing him." "I usually am right." Charlotte laughed. "The network's running smoothly, by the way. Cleaner than when Richard had it. Smaller but more efficient. I've cut out the dead weight, focused on sustainable operations. No more empire building. Just profitable business. Good for you. And the accountant? He settled in okay. Vincent glanced across the coffee shop where Ethan Prospero, now Ethan Matthews according to his new identity, sat with a laptop, working remotely for a tech company that thought he was a freelance developer. No one looking at him would see the man who'd nearly died uncovering a criminal conspiracy. He looked normal. Happy even. He's fine, Vincent said. Adjusting well. You didn't have to stay with him, you know. Our deal was just to give him a new identity. I know. So why Portland? Why play babysitter to a forensic accountant? Vincent watched Ethan laugh at something on his screen, relaxed in a way he'd never been during those desperate days on the boat. Because he reminds me that there are people in this world who do the right thing even when it costs them everything. I needed that reminder. Charlotte was quiet for a moment. You really did walk away. I really did. Do you miss it? The power, the control, Every single day, Vincent admitted. But I don't miss the person I was becoming. That's the difference. Well, if you ever change your mind. I won't. Take care of yourself, Charlotte. You too, Vincent. He hung up and returned to his book. 10 minutes later, Ethan closed his laptop and joined Vincent at his table. Was that her? Yes. Richard tried something. She handled it. Ethan nodded, unsurprised. In the months since they'd fled his old life, he and Vincent had developed an unlikely friendship. The kind born from shared trauma and mutual survival. They didn't talk much about the past. They focused on the small victories of the present. Good coffee, finished work projects, quiet evenings without looking over their shoulders. I got the job, Ethan said suddenly. Vincent looked up. The Seattle position? Yeah. They want me to start in 2 weeks. It's a senior analyst role, full benefits, the whole package. Ethan's smile was genuine. Real work. Legal work. Using my skills for something that doesn't involve criminal conspiracies. Congratulations. Vincent meant it. It means I'll be moving. Leaving Portland. I know. Ethan hesitated. What will you do? Vincent had been asking himself the same question. For 3 months he'd been in limbo. Not the person he was, not yet whoever he was becoming. He'd been living off legitimate investments, staying invisible, trying to figure out who Vincent Corleone was when he wasn't a mafia boss. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I'll figure it out. You could come to Seattle. Start over there too. Vincent considered it. A new city, a completely fresh start. No connections to his old life. No temptations to slip back into familiar patterns. Maybe, he said. Let me think about it. They finished their coffee in comfortable silence. 2 men who'd survived the same war trying to figure out peace. That night, Vincent walked along the Willamette River, hands in his coat pockets, watching the city lights reflect off the water. His phone rang, a number he recognized immediately. Luca. Boss. The big man's voice was cautious. Hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Never a bad time for you. How are things? Complicated. Charlotte's running things efficiently, but some of the old crew aren't happy taking orders from her. There's been talk about bringing you back. Not a coup or anything, Luca added quickly. Just, people miss your leadership. Vincent had expected this call eventually. Tell them I'm retired. I did. They don't believe it. They think you're waiting for the right moment to return. I'm not. I believe you, boss. But they need to hear it from you. There's a meeting next week. Nothing official, just some of the old lieutenants getting together. If you could call in just 5 minutes, tell them yourself that you're done. Vincent watched a jogger pass by, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the conversation happening 10 feet away about criminal organizations and retired mafia bosses. Set it up, Vincent said. But Luca? After this, no more calls about the business. You're loyal to Charlotte now. That's the deal. Understood, boss. And boss? For what it's worth. I think you made the right choice. Walking away. Not many men are strong enough to do that. After Luca hung up, Vincent stood by the river for another hour, thinking about strength and choices and the many definitions of power. The conference call happened 3 days later. Vincent sat in his small apartment, a 1-bedroom he'd rented month to month, furnished with the basics, nothing like the penthouse he'd owned in his previous life, with his phone on speaker. 7 voices from his past. Marco, Tony, Dominic, Sal, and 3 others who'd served under him for years. Vincent, Marco said, his Brooklyn accent thick as ever. Good to hear your voice. Yours too. I hear you've all been talking about bringing me back. Not bringing you back exactly, Tony clarified. More like, hoping you'd consider returning. Things aren't the same without you. Things aren't supposed to be the same. I left. That was deliberate. But Charlotte, Dominic started, is running the organization exactly as I authorized, Vincent interrupted. And if you have problems with her leadership, take them to her. Not to me. I'm not coming back to settle disputes or second-guess decisions. I'm out. Silence on the line. We just thought, Sal said quietly, that maybe you were waiting. Planning something. You're too smart to just walk away from everything you built. Vincent smiled, though no one could see it. You want to know if this is strategy? If I'm playing some long game? I'm not. I woke up one morning and realized I'd spent 20 years building a cage and calling it an empire. I'm not going back in that cage. Not for money, not for power, not for loyalty. So that's it. Marco's voice was incredulous. You're really just done? I'm really just done. Live your lives. Follow Charlotte or don't. But stop waiting for me to return and fix things. I'm not that person anymore. He hung up before anyone could respond. His phone buzzed immediately, a text from Luca. That was hard for them to hear. But it needed saying. Thank you. Vincent typed back. Take care of yourself. That's an order. Yes, boss. One last time, yes, boss. Vincent set down the phone and realized he was smiling. For the first time since he could remember, he felt light. Unburdened. Free. 2 weeks later, Vincent helped Ethan load boxes into a moving truck bound for Seattle. You're sure you don't want to come? Ethan asked, closing the truck's rear door. Fresh start, new city, no one knows either of us there. I'm sure. But I appreciate the offer. Ethan extended his hand. Vincent shook it, then pulled the younger man into a brief hug. Thank you, Ethan said quietly. For everything. For protecting me when you could have just handed me over. For burning down Richard's empire instead of joining it. For showing me that people can choose to be better than their worst instincts. You showed me the same thing, Vincent replied. You risked everything to do what was right. That took more courage than anything I've ever done. We saved each other then. I suppose we did. Ethan climbed into the truck. If you're ever in Seattle, I'll look you up. And Ethan, be boring. Be safe. Build a life so normal it would put your old self to sleep. That's the dream now. Ethan laughed. I can do boring. Watch me. The truck pulled away and Vincent stood on the sidewalk watching until it disappeared around a corner. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call he'd been delaying for weeks. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Vincent? Is that really you? Hello, Maria. His sister. 10 years younger, living in Denver with her husband and 2 kids. A life completely separate from the world Vincent had inhabited. They'd been close once, before his father's death, before Vincent had descended into the empire. She tried to maintain contact for years, but Vincent had pushed her away, convinced that distance kept her safe. Now he wondered if he'd just been keeping himself isolated. I can't believe you're calling, Maria said, her voice thick with emotion. I tried to reach you so many times, but your numbers kept changing, and then I heard rumors that something had happened. I'm fine, Vincent said. Better than fine, actually. Different. And I was hoping we could talk. Maybe meet for coffee sometime. I know it's been years and I have no right to ask. Yes, Maria interrupted. Yes, of course. Whenever you want. I have time now. A lot of time. They talked for an hour, catching up on a decade of missed conversations, on nieces and nephews Vincent had never met, on a life he'd thought he'd given up forever. When they finally hung up with plans to meet the following week, Vincent felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Hope. 6 months after walking away from his empire, Vincent Corleone stood in his sister's backyard in Denver, watching his nephew chase a soccer ball while his niece showed him drawings she'd made in school. Uncle Vincent, look. I drew a dragon. He knelt down to examine the crayon masterpiece. That's incredible. The wings are perfect. Do you like dragons? She asked. I'm starting to, he said. Maria joined him, handing him a beer. You look different. Lighter somehow. I feel different. Good different. Vincent thought about Richard, broken and paranoid in his studio apartment. About Charlotte running an empire with ruthless efficiency. About Ethan building a boring, beautiful life in Seattle. About all the choices that had led him here, to a backyard barbecue with family he'd almost lost forever. Yeah, he said. Good different. That night, alone in the guest room, Vincent received one final text from the unknown number that had started everything. Heard you're rebuilding bridges instead of empires. Proud of you. He stared at the message for a long time, then typed, "Who are you really?" The response came immediately. Someone who made the same choice you did. Someone who walked away and survived. You're not alone in this, Vincent. Remember that. Then this is goodbye. Life well. The number went dark after that, no longer in service when Vincent tried to call back. Whoever they were, Charlotte's former partner, a reformed criminal, someone from his past he'd forgotten, they'd given him the push he needed and then vanished. Vincent deleted the message thread and turned off his phone. 1 year after the warehouse meeting, Vincent opened a small consulting firm in Denver, legitimate business advisory for startups and small companies. He used the strategic mind he'd developed running a criminal empire to help honest people build honest businesses. His first client was a coffee shop owner trying to expand to 3 locations. His second was a tech startup navigating investor negotiations. His third was a nonprofit trying to structure their fundraising efficiently. None of them knew who he'd been. To them he was just Vincent Cole. He'd dropped the Corleone name quietly, legally. A sharp businessman with an uncanny ability to see 3 moves ahead and a surprising gentleness in his advice. He had dinner with Maria's family twice a week. He dated occasionally, nothing serious, still learning how to be vulnerable with someone who didn't work for him or fear him. He read books. He went to movies. He took a cooking class and discovered he was terrible at it but enjoyed trying. He built a life so normal it would have horrified his 20-year-old self. And he'd never been happier. On the anniversary of the night he'd walked out of that warehouse, Vincent sat in the same coffee shop where he'd met Ethan for the first time in Portland, visiting the city for a consulting job. He ordered the same drink, sat in the same seat. His phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. 1 year. We made it. Hope you're well. Vincent typed back, better than well. Hope you're still being boring. The boringest. Just got promoted. Life is aggressively normal. Perfect. Stay that way. Vincent set down his phone and looked out at the rain-soaked street, at people rushing past with umbrellas and briefcases and normal problems like traffic and deadlines and what to make for dinner. He'd once controlled a city through fear and money and strategic violence. Now he couldn't control anything except his own choices. And somehow that was infinitely more powerful. The waitress brought his coffee. He thanked her, paid, tipped generously. Then Vincent Cole, former mafia boss, reformed criminal, redeemed man, picked up his book and returned to the quiet, beautiful work of living an ordinary life. And in that ordinariness he finally found peace. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional, twist-filled stories. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did Vincent make the right choice? Would you have walked away from power like he did? I read every single comment and I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, remember, sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to walk away.